Hello, welcome in or welcome back to my channel. My name is Deb from DG Reads, and it's time for another weekend reading challenge. The Weekend Reading Challenge is a series I started on my channel last year. I think it was last year. Anyway, I got a little bit away from it at the end of the year just because there was so much going on with holidays and so forth. And to do a weekend reading challenge, you kind of need a weekend to do it in. And finding a spare weekend with no plans was hard to do. Even today, I'm starting this a little bit late. I tend to like to start these on the Friday, so I know what I'm getting into going into the weekend, or first thing Saturday morning. And it is already 10:30 in the morning because I had a nail appointment this morning and wanted to get that done first because my old nails were looking absolutely trashed. So let's not even think about that. But what is this? This is a jar of prompts. It has prompts that are various challenges you see on the internet related to reading, or things I've come up with at random, or maybe focus on a particular subscription box or something like that. So the idea is I pick one of these prompts and we roll with it and we spend the weekend trying to fulfill the prompt as much as we can and see how it goes. How is this going to go this weekend when I'm starting late? I have a little bit of a headache, but at this point, my nail appointment was my last plan for the weekend, so there's that. So hopefully, once I figure out what I'm doing, I can put back on some cozy clothes, put back on my PJs maybe, and just settle in and read with Kylie. So let's do this, and I'm nervous. I don't know what's going to come out of here. If I had my way, I would say not something that requires a lot of eyeball reading just because of the headache. I think some audio would be good, but I will embrace whatever it tells me. So let us see what we get. I think we're going with this one. Okay, this one is doable. So the prompt is to read books that are backlist, that are more than 2 years old. So not my pretty shiny new releases, but to find books that have been on my shelves for a while. So I think this is a good challenge. I have no clue off the top of my head what I'm going to do with it, but let's figure it out. Okay, things are off to a rough start. My phone just randomly completely died without warning me it was low on battery, and it shouldn't be low on battery at this time of day. So we'll see what's happening there because that could really derail my plans to audiobook. Kylie's got her ball. The neighbors are making noise. It's already something, but I have put together a pile of possibilities. Phone restarted and it's on 59%, so I have no idea. Maybe I held the button weirdly. I don't know. Anyway, it's back on. It's charging, but it is back on and working. So we have the possibility of audiobooking. The book that I think I'm going to start with is actually one that's going to help me out. It's not on my January TBR, but it is for sure on my February TBR because I need to read it for a live show. And that is Bloodlines by Rochelle Mead. This is the first book in the Bloodlines series. It is the spin-off series after Vampire Academy. And of course, I am one of the co-hosts on Sandra at Got a Thing for Things, read along of both of these series. So the live show for this one will be happening in early February. They're such quick reads. I was figuring I would pick it up at the beginning of February without a problem, but might as well, since these for sure are definitely backlist. This one came out in 2011, so definitely work. I found so many books as I was going through my shelves that came out in early 2024, but that's not quite 2 years. So we are sticking with the rule. I need to double check myself, but the Girl in the Corn duology, this book I have from Twisted Retreat, adds a letter at the front of this book that is dated January of 2024. So I believe that's the date of this collection, not the date the book originally came out. In any case, it is 2 years because there's 2 books in here. So the first one obviously had to have come out first and before the second one and the date of the letter. This is where my logic is taking me. I'm not committing to any books in the stack aside from Bloodlines, but I figured it would be good to maybe get the first one. I can get the audiobook if I want it. I have both books in here. If I love book one, I could read both. I'm assuming both probably fit the prompt, but we'll see. This one has to do with fairies in the cornfield and it's horror. There's kids or people at a carnival. That's really all I know. That's a horrible synopsis, but it's what I know. If I want to take some time to read with my eyes, which maybe I do at some point, we'll see. I would like to get to Dark Fever by Karen Murray Moning. This is a definitely older book. The publisher, which is Dell, sent me the first 3 books in this series last year, I think. What is time? But I haven't gotten to them yet. There is an audiobook for these, but it is Audible exclusive, so I at least want to try reading it with my eyes first to see A, if I get on with the book, and B, if I really want an audio or if I want to read it in print. They aren't super long, which is nice, and the print's not super small. I know there's a murder mystery aspect to this. A main character's sister has been killed, and there's some sort of clue left on her cell cell phone. That's really all I know about it. One I just got for my birthday, so it hasn't been on my shelf very long, but it's been on my TBR for ages, is The Immortality Thief by Tarrant Hunt. This is, I think, released in 2021-ish, 2022, and it has to do with an abandoned ship in space full of monsters. I don't know much beyond that, but it sounds like one that would really work for me. I seem to be in a sci-fi mood because I picked up a couple more. I have The Actual Star by Monica Byrne. This one has been on my shelf for ages. I received a gifted copy of this from Harper, and it's a multi-generational saga. It says it spans 2,000 years from the collapse of the ancient Maya to a far future utopia on the brink of civil war. So I'm assuming it's sci-fi, given that it's a utopia or dystopian type of story, but I really don't know much about this other than it's been on my shelf too long. Speaking of books that have been on my shelf for far too long and on my TBR for far too long, I have one more that is also in the sci-fi vein, and that is Snow Crash by Neil Stevenson. This one is feeling like it's a little bit more of a challenge book, but it's a book that's heralded as his breakthrough novel. It's an older title for sure. It has to do with Los Angeles, which is always fun since I live near Los Angeles. It has to do with kind of the cyberpunk type of a theme, I think, and computers and some sort of drug that's on the market, but it's like a digital drug. I don't know, but this one does always call to me from the shelf. It had a new release, which is what this cover is, which I think is just really pretty. And this one is a gifted copy I received from Del Rey. So that gives me lots of options. Obviously, I'm not going to get through all of these in the next day and a half, basically, is what I have left. What did I do to myself? But I'm excited for this. What I feel like I'm missing here is like a good thriller, and I need to maybe comb my shelves and find something in that vein if I want to break up some of these bigger novels. I've got horror, I've got fantasy-ish, which has some mystery elements, I suppose, to it. I've got things with sci-fi bent for sure, but I feel like maybe it's a little bit of an unbalanced stack, but we'll see. In any case, I just made myself another cup of coffee so I can do that. I can actually start a book on audio. I think I'm going to make myself a bagel or something for breakfast because I'm getting hungry because it's nearly 11 o'clock at this point and I haven't even like sat down and started my day. So let's do that, and I'll check in when I have some updates for you. Quick check-in just to give you an update. I have been working on Bloodlines. I'm about 60% of the way through, I think, thereabouts. I'm not going to give you a ton of thoughts on this one just because it is a sequel series. It's also a book that will have a full live show. Well, this plus book number 2 in the series, which I couldn't tell you what that's called right at the moment. I don't know the names of them past Bloodlines, but there's going to be a whole live show for those in early February, I believe. So with that, I am having a good time with this one. I kind of in the back of my head thought maybe I'd started the spin-off series, but I remember nothing of this, so I'm guessing maybe I didn't. And I just was aware it existed. I do find it interesting. We are getting a different perspective, kind of a different main POV going into the series compared to the POVs that we had in the initial series, and it's giving kind of more of a glimpse into different parts of this universe. And there's definitely things that tie back to the original series. I'm not convinced you could start here and fully grasp the entire world necessarily, but I will say that she's gotten better at recapping what has happened in previous books a little more naturally in here than some of the books in the original series where there would be a recap at the beginning that was extremely info dumpy. I do think that's improved here. So anyway, having a good time with this one, about what I expected from it. I don't think it's going to be a new favorite book, but good time. And I'm working on a grocery list, so that's my next objective, is to get that ordered. I'm just going to have it delivered. It is miserable outside. It's just very dry, very warm. It's January and it's in the 80s, and that means that we've got really ugly winds going on, even though the wind part isn't here, the kind of impact of that. And I've put on moisturizer. My face still feels so dry, and I am chugging water like you wouldn't believe. So I decided going out into the world was even less appealing than it normally would have been. So delivery is coming, and my objective, kind of thinking about the theme, worked really well with the fact that I've pulled out a couple of recipes that I've been making for years. One of them I haven't made in several years. It's a peanut chicken, very basic, but very tasty from what I recall. So we're going with backlist recipes to go with it. And I don't have a backlist crochet project, but I did make one of the little squares that I need to be making. I am working on an Alice in Wonderland themed blanket. It was a crochet along that happened I want to say summerish, and I worked on it during the summer and then I fell off of it for other projects. So I am now on week 5 of the crochet along, and currently I had to make 4 squares, 2 of them green, 2 of them in this pattern, and so I need 1 more of these. The green ones are already done, and then I get to move on to different things, making some appliques to go on top of the squares. So even though this is not a backlist project, the fact that it's Alice in Wonderland, which is certainly a book that was published more than 2 years ago, related, I think we can make this tie in. Although I feel like my hands need a little bit of a break, so we're going to deal with the groceries. We're going to maybe play with the puppy a little bit and continue with the audiobook for this one. I kind of am feeling like I might want to try physically reading something for a little bit. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what direction I want to go with things. So I might put this one down until I'm picking back up my crochet, just for the sake of whatever. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to share a ton of final thoughts on this one regardless, but I need to make lunch relatively soon. I need to get the groceries ordered in time to get stuff for dinner. Needed to frost chicken. You don't care, but these are the things in my brain at the moment. So anyway, sorry, my brain's all over the place. So I'll leave you here. I've got a puppy staring at me, and I will check in with you later on this afternoon. Hello again. It has been quite a while. I did not make it back with you in the afternoon as I intended, but that's okay because when last I updated you, it was already like 4 o'clock. I got my groceries, put those away, didn't cook a single thing. That's fine. Just ate a quick meal for dinner. We can deal with the cooking maybe tomorrow. I have, however, been successful for the most part in my reading. I finished up Bloodlines, and like I said, I'm not going to give a ton of thoughts because there's a whole live show coming, but had a good time. It was fun. I took a little bit to get settled back into this, but I enjoyed the expansion to the world. I think it was a fun time. Was it quality literature? Probably not, but a good time was had. And then I get to the somewhat part because I tried reading Snow Crash. I picked up the audiobook for it because it looked a little bit dense, and I made it half an hour, basically 40 pages into it, and I'm just not connecting with this one. There's just something about the narrative that is not drawing me in. It feels like an older book, and I don't know how to put a better finger on it than that. I like the world. I think there's interesting things going on, but the 40 pages, the half hour of audio I listened to, was basically a futuristic pizza delivery. That doesn't go smoothly. There's a character. He is a pizza delivery person in the real world, although I didn't 100% quite get a full picture in my mind of this whole system. There's obviously futuristic travel and people being messengers and attaching themselves to other people's vehicles, and it just didn't quite click with me. And then there's also a virtual world in here, which I did find interesting. He was kind of an early access person to this world. He has kind of his stake in this world. It has become a major thing, this metaverse thing, but the narrative isn't sucking me in, and it's a long audiobook, and it is a long book. So I think this one is just not for me. I'm not going to push it. This is our year of embracing the DNF if we need to. And I haven't even done a DNF this year. So DNF number 1. And then I did a little bit of physical reading, not a whole lot. I read about 30 pages of Dark Fever, and I am enjoying this one so far, but it is a physical read. I could get the audiobook, but for such a short book, I kind of want to give it a try reading physically, but then I wanted to get back to my crochet. So this one got put down. I'm not going to give thoughts or really a synopsis or anything at this point because, again, I'm only 30 pages in. Hopefully I will do better on this one tomorrow, but that's where we're at with it. And so where I wound up, I feel like this is already all over the place, is picking up The Girl in the Corn because I was able to get the audiobook for this one from Hoopla. This one really is a pretty edition. This is, I probably already said it, but this is the duology. It's the 2 books in one. The Creepy Cornfield. We have a festival going on here. I think that's more so book 2 maybe, but I'm not entirely sure because on the back you can see the girl in the corn has like a corn, and then the boy from Two Worlds kind of has the more carnival-y depiction on the back. So that is what I'm guessing is going on in here. So I did make it about 69% of the way into the first book in here, and I'm having a decent time with it. I don't think it's going to be a huge win. I'm thinking 3.5 currently if I had to guess, but it is definitely keeping me intrigued, so that's good, and keeping me entertained while I'm crocheting. And we are following a young boy at the beginning of this book named Thomas, and he is the son of a farming family. His mother's doing some gardening, and he's out hanging out with her, and he turns around and he sees a little itty bitty fairy lady, and he's kind of charmed. He turns away for a little bit, turns back, she's gone. Okay, that's fine. He starts thinking this is maybe kind of weird though, and he mentions it to his family, and they look at him a little funny, and then this fairy appears in his bedroom at night and begins begins kind of stalking him in a creepy way, potentially. Things are a little weird. Eventually, something happens. This is all in the synopsis, so I don't feel it's spoilery. And she leads him into the cornfield, and something happens. It's traumatic. He survives it. His family survives it, but he winds up in a mental hospital because he's got these wild stories, and people don't believe him, of course. He kind of checks himself in. At least eventually he's voluntary. I don't know, maybe at the beginning he wasn't. I'm not clear on that. But while he's there, he meets another young man, and we've seen this young man in this story. He's a bad guy, or he's presented as a very bad guy. He's a little bit older than Thomas. He also meets someone that he likes, and that's Jillian in this mental hospital. And then we eventually are following them as adults. And this is all kind of following Thomas as he's going on in his life and trying to recover his life and live a life that's not just completely plagued by the fact he was in a mental hospital. He has these visions of a fairy and all this stuff. I think the kind of concept of this fairy as being something maybe playful, maybe evil, maybe a little bit of everything. And the mom at one point early on in the book says, not everything in a pretty cover is a good thing. She says it probably better than that, but I think there's an interesting interplay in here of these entities and whether they're doing things for good, they're doing things for bad. The fairy is telling him that she's trying to help him, but she's also manipulating him and like trying to force him to follow her and things like that. And it's interesting. It is keeping me very intrigued where we're going with it and how this is going to wind up with a sequel. I don't understand that either exactly. I know book 1 was published in 2022. I'm not sure when the second book came out. I don't know that it says in here. The book as a whole was copyrighted in 2024. And like I mentioned, the letter in here is from 2024. But I'm intrigued to keep going with this one, although I'm kind of winding down, I think, for this evening. I don't even know what time it is. It is nearly 11 o'clock at night. That's probably why I'm winding down, because I did not sleep well last night. But I have been in the crochet groove. I made my second square, and I made a little teapot to go on this one. We're going to ignore the fact that I didn't get it centered properly. I was kind of aiming to do it on a diagonal, and as I started sewing, it wound up not being so much diagonal. That's okay. I think the teapot is super cute. I am currently making a couple of teacups to go on the other square that's like this, and then I have a few more appliques to make for the other 2 squares. And then I think that's it for the week I'm currently working on. So I would like to think I could wrap this up tomorrow and move on to the final week of that particular crochet project, which would be nice. I would love to finish this whole blanket by the end of the month. I'm starting a new blanket in the very beginning of February, so that would be ideal. I'm not committing to that because we'll see. Sometimes I just need a little bit of a break between segments, and my hands sometimes need a little bit of a break, especially crocheting shapes, little tight stitches. Anyway, I will show you the cute little teacups tomorrow that go with the teapot to go on the opposite square on the blanket, most likely. And anyway, I think what I may do is finish up the little teacup I'm working on now and leave the rest for tomorrow, take my physical reading book to bed with me, and just relax for the evening and hopefully get a decent night's sleep so that I can get a good amount of reading in tomorrow. I don't have any plans for tomorrow. The watch along I usually do on Sundays, we're taking a week off from that. So it's a good day for some reading. Happy Sunday. I'm having a nice lazy morning. It is coming up on noon, so not so much morning anymore, but that's okay. Still in my PJs. I slept in a little bit. I was still up and moving around before 8, but not a lot before 8, I don't think. And I've had coffee. I've been participating in some reading sprints with people, and generally speaking, it's been a good morning. But I do have a few updates for you. First off, before I forget, since this is turning into a crochet vlog, I made my little teacups. Are they perfect? Definitely not, but I like them. I think they're cute. And then I've also started the pieces that are going to go onto the green squares, and it's going to be trees. These are the tops of the trees. Obviously, you know, a little bit fantasy tree-y for Alice in Wonderland, but that's where we're at with that. In terms of reading, I finished up The Girl in the Corn last night, and this was fine. It was enjoyable. It was entertaining. It definitely kept me intrigued, so it has that going for it. I think it's winding up a 3.5. It wasn't doing anything super unique. I liked the way the Fae were portrayed in here as being a little bit confusing as to what their alliances were, what their kind of moralities were, and so forth. I can see where there's room for a spin-off with the way this ended, but also it did feel like a complete story. So I'm not going to get to the sequel this weekend, but I will still have the sequel on my TBR to get to at some point. And then I have been making my way in print through Dark Fever. I'm 130 or so pages in. I'm going to take a crochet break right now and sit and do some physical reading for a little bit, and I'm having a good time with this one. It is definitely a book of its time. This one was published in 2006, so it's coming up on 20 years old, and you can kind of tell, but it's really fun at the same time, as long as you're willing to overlook some things. So backing up a little bit, the story in here, we are following a woman named Mac. She's a young adult. She is having a kind of lazy summer, sitting by the pool, absorbing sun, and working on her tan when, unbeknownst to her, her sister, who is studying abroad in Ireland, is killed. And she gets the call that tells her her sister is dead. And this is, of course, devastating for her and unexpected. And when she turns her phone on, she's not someone who's super technology focused. Obviously, this is 2006, not 2026, so it makes more sense that she's not glued to her phone. She gets a voicemail from her sister, and the voicemail doesn't make a lot of sense to her. It tells her she needs to find something. She can't even understand the words her sister is using for what she's supposed to find. She is told that she doesn't even know what she is, and that doesn't make sense. And all of this raises so many questions for her. The police in Ireland, after 3 weeks, close the case basically, or move it off to cold cases where nothing's going to happen to it. And she feels like there's more to look into. So she makes the decision to rebel against her parents, go off to Ireland on her own. I mean, she's an adult. It's not like she's running away from her parents, but they don't want her to go. She goes off, and things are just weird when she gets there. People look at her and they expect her to know things. They expect her to realize what's going on around her, and there's a lot of weird stuff going on around her. She's seeing visions of things that don't look like reality. She winds up in a really weird side of town, and she finds a bookstore. And when she goes into this bookstore, she's asking questions about what her sister said in the message, and the bookstore owner is a grumpy man, definitely to her more sunny personality. See where this is going. And basically says she shouldn't be asking these questions. It's going to cause problems. Can't really believe she doesn't know what she's doing, and eventually realizes she's completely clueless. He also wants to find the object she's looking for, and they form a reluctant alliance, let's call it, at this stage. So they are looking for this thing, this book. There's a lot of bookish discussions in here, which I enjoy. The Ireland setting I'm enjoying. I am enjoying learning the world through her. It's a little info dumpy in places because she's learning a lot, and she's making these notes like at the start of some of the chapters, and just in the middle she's like defining what a royal hunter is, and defining this, and this thing could kill me, and this is what it looks like. So we're getting a little bit of info dumpy setup at the beginning of this, but it's just brain candy. It's fun. It is something that I definitely am looking forward to finishing off today. I think it's a quick read when I sit down and read it. So I'm kind of alternating between this and then planning to start an audiobook so I can do some crochet today as well. Not entirely positive I will finish off the crochet week that I'm supposed to be doing, because I realize I need to make these trees and attach them. Then I'm supposed to attach a bunch of squares together, and then it wants me to do a full round around the sides before we move on to the final week. So there's a little more than I thought, but that's okay. I'm not on any deadline except the ones in my own head. So with that, I'm going to get back to reading and check in with you later on. I'm back. As this seems to be more of a crochet vlog than a reading vlog at this point, I did finish my little green squares with the roses on them. There's one there, and the other two corner pieces still need to go in because Kylie fell asleep in my lap, and I still have my teapot and stuff over here. So that is my next priority, is get the other two squares attached, which shouldn't take too long, but then I have to go around the entire square and put one row of yellow on because all the edges are very wobbly and there's little divots between panels and things like that. So I need to do an evening up around before I start on the 6th week of pattern. But I do have a couple updates for you. First off, I have about 70 pages left in Dark Fever, and I think I'm going to finish that up probably tonight in bed, so you'll get a final update Monday morning, because yeah, that's the plan. Because right now I just want to finish my crocheting, what I had set up to do this weekend, which is possible at this point. We'll see if I actually finish it. But in the meantime, I have been audiobooking, and the audiobook I picked up is We Know You Remember by Tove Alsterdal. I probably am butchering this. It is a translated Nordic noir type of fiction, and I actually finished the whole thing. I kept picking it up, putting it down in between physically reading this guy over here and when I wanted to crochet and so forth, and didn't really realize, I got to the point where I realized I was like 3/4 of the way through and I was in the middle of attaching panels and stuff, and I said, you know what, let's just finish it. It's fine. People will forgive. This one is dark. It is noir. I suppose that is not to be a surprise. This is the start of a series, but I'm personally, for my tracking, going to count it as a standalone because it does wrap everything up. I feel like probably the next book would have overlapping characters, but maybe not an overlapping story. So A, I'm not rushing to pick up the next book, but also I feel like this works as a standalone, so I'm just counting it as that. And the story in this one, it begins with a man finding the body of his father who has been murdered. They were estranged for the most part, and this is because the son had been accused of raping and probably killing a woman. There's no body, but this is what everyone assumes has happened to her, and therefore he was ostracized. The family was ostracized in a lot of ways, and the main detective that we are following, the main POV that we have in here, she actually was friends with this man Olaf's sister way back when. She was very young. She was like 9, I think, at the time, but as it turns out, and as she begins investigating everything, she starts to kind of reconsider the original mystery as well and realize there are some ties to her personal life. As seems to be the case, I don't put myself out as an expert in Nordic noir, but I have noticed that you do tend to get a lot of the personal life of the detective along with the mystery itself. And in here, we in particular are following the fact that this detective, this woman, has a mother dealing with dementia and the struggles of that, and her trying to balance keeping her mother safe, but also maintaining some semblance of independence with her. We also have a little bit of her love life alongside. I think the mystery was really good in here. It had enough red herrings, enough twists and turns to the story, while being very procedural in some ways, but also very emotional in other ways. There are a lot of dark topics in here. It goes into both what was theorized to have happened to this girl, which obviously was not good, but there's also a prior case that gets discussed in here a couple times that had to do with a girl who's raped by several young boys or young men, and they don't pull punches when it comes to some of the graphicness of that, so I would be wary of this one in terms of trigger warnings on that end. I did find it engaging. Obviously, the fact that I flew through it today, didn't even notice I'd gone past the halfway point, is a good sign for this type of book. I appreciate, reading about a different culture, a different setting. It was interesting kind of just learning some of the little things, like how quickly you can declare someone dead, how different procedures work in this different country setting, and found that really interesting as well. So I think this one's probably landing at a 3.5 to a 4 for me. And like I said, I'm not rushing out to read the entire series. I don't know how many books there are in this. This one came out in 2021. I think it was also translated in 2021, copyrighted 2020, English in 2021. So it is definitely in keeping with our theme for the weekend. And also, this is an author I would for sure be interested to read more from. I would not consider myself a huge fan of Nordic noir. It can go either way for me, but in this case, it definitely worked. So that's a good thing. So I'm going to get back to my crocheting. I'm probably not going to start anything new just because it is 8:30 at night already and I still have to finish up Dark Fever. But I'm going to get back to crocheting and then read the rest of my book, and I will check in with you in the morning. Good morning. It is now Monday, which sadly means it is no longer the weekend, and I have to go back to work. But I did indeed finish up Dark Fever last night before bed, and then stayed up way too late doom scrolling on my phone. But let's ignore that part and how exhausted I am this morning and talk about the finish of this book. This was a fun read. Is it great literature? No. Is it the best writing? Also no. But I had a fun time with it. It kind of was a nostalgic feel to like the fantasy, romancy stuff that I read more so in my younger days. And that makes sense since this book was published 20 years ago. But it does end with some answers. It also has still some suspicions. It's an interesting writing style because the narrator knows she survives the book. She's occasionally talking to the reader, not super often, but often enough where she's saying, I can't believe looking back that I didn't believe this, or I didn't know this, or I can't believe I survived this night, and things like that. So you do get hints to the outcome a little bit. You get hints about her relationship with this man that's helping her figure out this world. Not in the sense of where it's going between the two of them necessarily, but we know they're still working together in the future because she'll say things like, later we went over this. And even though he's a little sus in places and we don't know exactly what's going on with him, I think that lessened the tension maybe a little bit. But in general, it's a more chatty narration than I usually like, but for some reason it's working well enough for me in here. The book just kind of ends, really. I flipped the next page. I'm like, oh, we're in a glossary. And it definitely is one where you want to pick up book 2, or at least I want to pick up book 2 relatively quickly to keep the story going. I felt like this felt like a semi-complete book, but definitely not something that felt like you could just read it as a standalone. So overall, I think this one's like a 3.5. I had fun with it, and I think that enjoyment level is bringing that ranking up a little bit. reading rather. Told you I'm tired. Anyway, I did successfully then feel like I did a good job with this reading challenge. Okay, I checked and replaced the battery before I started filming. I did not check the status of my memory card. So it was full, so I had to clear up a little space, and I'm back to wrap things up. Was this the most challenging of weekend challenges? No, but it did force me out of kind of my new and pretty and glittery books to pick up some things that have been on my shelf for longer, some older books, definitely ranging in time, and I DNF'd one that's been on my shelf that I've been a little bit intimidated to pick up, and as it turns out, maybe isn't for me anyway. So I figure this weekend was a win. Let me know in the comments below, have you read any of these books? Are any of them on your TBR? What is a backlist book that you've read recently? Let me know all the things. And if you have any ideas of different challenges to add to my jar of reading prompts, let me know. I definitely have a mix in there, but I'm looking to add maybe a few more. I was thinking about maybe adding a slip for each of my bingo challenges. And if I could pull that, maybe try to get a bingo in a weekend or randomly pick prompts from that in a weekend. Let me know your thoughts if you have any. And if you've made it this far and you don't have anything to comment but want to let me know you're here, leave me some sort of sickness emoji for fever. I don't know. That's all I could come up with in the moment. If you could hit that like button below, I would surely appreciate it, and subscribe if you're interested in more of my weekend challenges, more of my book reviews, and more of my bookish content in general. But for now, I'll leave you here and see you real soon in a new video.